I don and hashtag 039, T understand Bruno Mars. Despite enduring some of life and hashtag 039's most trying circumstances, this extraordinary talent has captured the hearts of people all across the globe. Now, though, a shocking $50 million agreement is supposedly in the works. The long-awaited response from Bruno has arrived, but it and hashtag 039's not what you were expecting. In this film, we explore the life of this mysterious superstar, who never stops surprising us with his rumors and truths. Let me tell you, our dear Bruno has been through a lot. The rise of Bruno Mars from obscurity in Hawaii to superstardom is an inspiring story of skill, grit, and luck in the entertainment industry. We should examine this gifted artist and hashtag 039's life and work more closely. The man formerly known as Bruno Mars, Peter Gene Hernandez, was born in Honolulu on October 8, 1985, in Hawaii. As a child, he lived in the vibrant Waikiki neighborhood with a musical family. Peter Hernandez, his father, was of Jewish Brooklynite descent and originally hails from Puerto Rico. An immigrant from the Philippines with Spanish ancestry, Bernadette San Pedro Bayo was his mother. Surprisingly, Bruno and hashtag 039's moniker came to him at the tender age of 2. Bruno Sammartino was the name his father gave him because he looked like the renowned wrestler. Throughout his life, Bruno worked to hone his musical abilities. Along with drums, guitar, piano, and percussion, he picked up a number of other instruments. Having said that, young Bruno did not always have it easy. The end of the love messages occurred when he was 12 years old, when his parents split. The family was financially strained as a result of his father and hashtag 039's unsuccessful companies. They sometimes had little choice but to relocate to less desirable parts of Hawaii, and some even took to living in their cars or on rooftops. Bruno persisted in following his musical dreams in spite of all these obstacles. Jimi Hendrix, a rock icon whose guitar playing inspired Bruno to pick up the instrument, was one of his new musical influences. As a teenager, Bruno kept performing, most notably with the Schoolboys and other groups in Hawaii. Bruno took a bold step when he moved to Los Angeles to pursue his dream of being a professional musician after graduating from high school at the age of 17. In order to stand out from the crowd, he decided to use his boyhood nickname along with Mars as his stage name, Bruno Mars. Aside from avoiding being stereotyped as just a Latin performer, Bruno picked this name since people always told him he was extraordinary. Bruno had numerous obstacles while in Los Angeles. He had a hard time making ends meet because he lived in an impoverished area. But people soon began to recognize his abilities. He was looking for a breakthrough after signing with Motown Records in 2004, but alas, it never came. He was let go by the record label a year and a half later. Bruno decided to remain in Los Angeles and continue chasing his aspirations despite this setback. He inked a publishing agreement with Cameron Strang and Steve Lindsay in 2005. With their help, hit songwriting is a skill that Bruno mastered. While waiting for his big break, he honed his craft alongside other accomplished producers and composers. While all was going on, Bruno was a member of the band Sex Panther and he kept writing music. Despite numerous record labels passing on his work, he persisted. He first crossed paths with Aaron Bayshuk in 2006, the two would go on to form Atlantic Records and hashtag 039 management team. It took nearly 3 years for Bruno to be officially signed by Atlantic Records, despite Bayshuk and hashtag 039's admiration for his talent. Bruno and hashtag 039's solo career took off after he began collaborating with other artists. Not only did he sing on Billionaire by Trovie McCoy, but he was also on Nothing on You by B.O.B. Nothing on You peaked at number 1 on Billboard and hashtag 039's Hot 100 list, but both of these songs were massive hits. The outstanding songwriting and vocal skills displayed by Bruno were on full display in these hits. The more famous Bruno became, the more money he made. One of the highest paid musicians of 2013 according to estimates, he made almost $18 million. As time went on, his wealth grew even more substantial. After raking in an estimated $39 million in 2017, Bruno soared to the position of 6th highest paid star globally. Bruno has been successful in many other areas besides music. His charismatic stage presence and high-energy live performances have also made him famous. His performances at the 2014 and 2016 Super Bowl halftime shows were highly acclaimed and solidified his position as a premier entertainer. Bruno Mars has overcome several obstacles, despite his tremendous popularity. His long-term struggles with the law are one example of these obstacles. One by one, we will examine these difficulties more closely. Bruno Mars got himself into an unexpected jam after a performance at a famous Las Vegas resort on a September evening in 2010. When the security guards started to suspect Mars for something he did in the lavatory, the evening took a surprising turn. His arrest was a result of their fears. This is the lowest point for the budding star and #039's career. Mars acknowledged that he had made a mistake and felt profound regret for his conduct at this trying time. In retrospect, he expresses shock at how fast things deteriorated and talks about the important lessons he gained from the ordeal. The seriousness of the charges against Mars did not prevent him from avoiding jail time. He and the police reached a deal. He agreed to attend educational programs and complete community service as part of the deal. The year 2012 found Mars was officially exonerated after meeting all the conditions outlined in the deal. The legal difficulties Bruno Mars encountered, especially in the area of copyright disputes, increased in tandem with his rising stardom. The case that stood out occurred on January 28, 2014, when Demetrius Orlandis Proctor, a songwriter, sued Mars and Travie McCoy, a rapper. The popular song "Billionaire," which Mars co-wrote, was at the heart of the argument. According to Proctor, his own music was remarkably similar to the melody of Billionaire. He insisted he had the legal right to perform and distribute a song that was purportedly a ripoff of Billionaire. The United States Copyright Office certificate for Frisky Volumes 1 to 30 tapes was submitted by Proctor to substantiate his claim. Proctor claimed that Mars and McCoy willfully violated his copyright in their case. The eradication of all copies of Billionaire was among his severe demands. This involved eradicating any physical copies that were still in existence and erasing any illegal downloads from servers and PCs, claiming that the defendants had utilized his work without authorization. Proctor asserted that he possessed exclusive rights to duplicate and distribute the music. But the court processes went against Proctor. Citing various problems with Proctor and #039's claim, the judge agreed to dismiss Travie McCoy and #039's case. The fact that Proctor had failed to adequately serve McCoy with the necessary legal papers was a major issue. The court also found that it did not have personal jurisdiction over McCoy to hear this case. Another factor working against Proctor was that he did not identify which portions of his work were allegedly plagiarized. The defendants felt the system was biased against them because they couldn't and #039 put up a good defense due to the missing information. One of Bruno Mars and #039's biggest hits, Uptown Funk, became embroiled in fresh controversy when he was enjoying the success of his November 2016 album, 24K Magic. The Globe was enchanted by this infectious song featuring Mars and produced by Mark Ronson. The widespread use of it, however, resulted in a deluge of copyright infringement lawsuits that kept attorneys occupied for quite some time. The Gap Band, a classic funk band, presented the greatest obstacle. They, and their producer, claimed that Uptown Funk sounded a lot like their hit "Oops Upside Your Head." As a consequence of the settlement, members of the Gap Band were acknowledged as co-songwriters of Uptown Funk, ending the issue. In addition to the obvious artistic merit, there was a large monetary windfall associated with this acknowledgement. Because 17.7% of the popular song and #039's publication revenues went to the Gap Band. Although this settlement appeared to conclude the Uptown Funk copyright drama, it was actually not the case. It appeared like other artists were compelled to follow suit when the Gap Band and #039's assertion gained significant attention due to the song and #039's enormous success. Uptown Funk allegedly stole ideas from a Serbian singer named Victoria, even though she chose not to go to court in the end. Alternately, the electro-funk group Collage sued Uptown Funk, claiming that the genre was infringing on their young girl song. There was another group, The Sequence, that claimed that Mars and Ronson had infringed on their song, Funk You Up. The number of court disputes kept growing. The LRDA Entertainment Company joined the fray in 2017. Highlighting the same elements between Zapp and #039, famous funk hit more bounce to the ounce in Uptown Funk. Despite the eventual dismissal or settlement of some of these cases, the discussion that ensued illuminated the intricate problems of copyright and originality within the music industry. Both music reviewers and listeners were deeply divided by these legal disputes. While some thought Mars and Ronson had given funk a new spin, others said Uptown Funk sampled too much from the past. Cultural appropriation was another delicate subject that the controversy delved into. Mars, who is not black but of mixed ancestry, has been accused by some critics of ripping off black artists without giving them credit. Some supported Mars, saying that he paid tribute to funk and #039's history and roots in his songs. On the widely watched internet program The Grapevine, Sensei Aisha too was one of the most outspoken detractors. I should have felt that Mars was only recycling old ideas instead of presenting something fresh, hence she panned the album. According to her, Mars was able to achieve some of her success by making black culture more acceptable to white audiences. In January of 2021, the descendants of Robert and Ronnie Wilson, who were members of the Gap Band, sued BMG Rights Management, adding another twist to the Uptown Funk saga. They claimed the business was in default on the royalties due to them for their work on the song. A 2015 agreement allegedly granted Ronnie and Robert Wilson 3.4% of the copyright on Uptown Funk, as stated in the lawsuit. The purpose of this arrangement was to recompense them for the usage of their work in Uptown Funk, specifically from Oops Upside Your Head. The heirs of Wilson asserted that BMG, who refused to pay royalties or provide accurate accounting for their portion of the deal after acquiring the Gap Band's publisher in 2015. For breach of contract, the heirs wanted more than $75,000 plus interest at 9% from 2015 forward. The Wilsons claimed that BMG had a legal obligation to pay them all of the Uptown Funk royalties that were due under the contract once they had acquired the publishing rights. The heirs of Wilson, however, took a surprising turn in April of 2021 and abandoned the claim. They did it without bias, so the lawsuit may be revived at a later date. The claims were unfounded, according to BMG, stressing that no money had changed hands in order to dismiss the case. Bruno Mars kept his music and live performances front and center despite these legal issues. Mars and #039 fame and songwriting prowess remained unaffected by the Uptown Funk controversy, which was difficult to ignore. If anything, his life and #039's events have probably heightened his awareness of the intricate legal system and the value of creativity in his job. We are interested in hearing your thoughts on the latest tempest that is developing surrounding Bruno Mars. A controversy involving Bruno Mars erupted in early 2021. Word on the street was that the top-charting musician had run up a massive gambling debt. These assertions state that Mars allegedly owed $50 million to MGM Resorts International. Speculation circulated that Mars and #039's preoccupation with gambling had become pathological, leading to substantial losses that placed him in a precarious financial position. Mars allegedly used a significant chunk of his profits from his lucrative Las Vegas residency to settle this claimed obligation, according to these claims. Further fueling the fire was an anonymous source who said that Mars and #039 gambling habits made him practically MGM and #039's property. A lot of people paid notice to this surprising accusation, both critics and news organizations. It was hard for many to imagine that Bruno Mars, who had achieved so much success, could be in such a jam. It was said that Mars and #039's Las Vegas shows brought in about $90 million a year. His albums had sold millions, he had received countless accolades, and he had played to sold-out crowds all over the globe. It appeared contradictory to his dazzling public image that this international superstar was secretly battling with a mountain of debt. Some, nevertheless, have suggested that Mars and #039 previous statements regarding gambling lend credence to the rumors. James Corden and #039's Carpool Karaoke included in 2016 an appearance by. At one point in his life, Mars had admitted that he had to rely on gambling to cover his expenses. The revelation was made in a light-hearted way, but it made some wonder if there was more going on than what was initially apparent. The speculation grew, and MGM Resorts decided to deal with it directly. In a strongly worded statement, the corporation denied the accusations without equivocation. Mars and hashtag 039, assertions that MGM owed them $50 million were totally unfounded, according to MGM. Their cordial and mutually beneficial connection with Mars was a point of emphasis, complementing his performances at their venues, such as Park MGM. MGM took great pleasure in their collaboration with the artist and reassured fans that the accusation that Mars and hashtag 039 gambling had caused such a catastrophic situation was completely unfounded. Their goal in making this announcement was to finally remove all conjecture. The rumors persisted even after MGM issued a stern rebuttal. Many people found themselves unable to put the story down. Some people wondered if there was more going on than what was being said, considering how addicting gambling is and how much money Mars was making from his Las Vegas residency. What heightened the mystery was the timing of the claims. With millions of cash rolling in from his Las Vegas residency, Mars was riding high in his career. Fans wanted to know how the artist, who seemed to have complete command of their business, was handling their money problems. However, when rumors about Mars and hashtag 039 wealth persisted, the artist found himself in the limelight for a different purpose. Mars and his musical collaborator Anderson .Paak stole the show in 2023 when they abruptly decided not to have their record An Evening with Silk Sonic nominated for a Grammy. The album was a heavy favorite for numerous Grammy nominations after it garnered extensive critical acclaim and commercial success. Mars and Anderson thought they had already won when their hit song, Leave the Door Open, received such an enormously enthusiastic reception, as Mars recounted, which had triumphed at the awards show the year before. The recognition they had previously gotten, he said, was sufficient, and everything additional was just gravy. The two wanted to exit with style, so they opted out of the Grammy submission process. This would have allowed other musicians to take center stage. Maroon 5 thanked the Grammys for the opportunity to perform and the fans for their support. He elaborated by saying that they wanted to honor the work of other musicians at this event. Although Silk Sonic and hashtag 039's decision was respected by the Recording Academy, many fans and reviewers were perplexed by the move. It seems strange for Mars and Paak to skip the 2023 Grammys after their stunning sweep in 2022, when they took home 4 prizes, including Record of the Year and Song of the Year for Leave It Open. Many people were skeptical of this decision. Some have speculated that Mars is trying to escape further public scrutiny by denying the reports around his gambling habits. More scrutiny of his private life could result from his winning many Grammys, maybe reviving the debates around his music and hashtag 039's uniqueness that had overshadowed his previous releases. Yet, they were mistaken. Another musical collaboration caught Mars and hashtag 039 followers off guard in August 2024. His latest hit, With a Smile, is a collaboration with Lady Gaga. Many were ecstatic because this was the first new song either musician has released in a long time. Mars and Gaga gave fans a sneak peek at their collaboration on social media in the days leading up to the release, including mysterious messages and photographs of themselves wearing items from each other. Their fan bases were abuzz with anticipation for the single thanks to this astute marketing campaign. An emotional ballad, With a Smile, delves into topics like love, connection, and life and hashtag 039's unpredictability. There has been much fan speculation about the song and hashtag 039's possible hidden significance. It could be a reaction to the many critiques and difficulties that Gaga and Mars have encountered throughout the course of their careers. His legion of devoted followers can see clearly what he and hashtag 039's planning next. In the complicated world of fame, Bruno Mars will keep surprising and delighting us with his music. His future endeavors, in whatever form they take, will undoubtedly captivate audiences just like he does.